So I started talking about the car, talking about the driver, and a guy walks out of the crowd and said, "How'd you like to get paid?" Okay.
You certainly have the voice for it.
Well,
and actually, what I was getting at was that happened today. You just showed up and started talking on the microphone, right? Because
yeah.
you didn't have.
Well, it was just music, and that's boring when you got race cars going all the time. So I got out there, and my goal, and I'm the staff announcer at Kerdoon, so I'm there every Thursday night anyway. But my goal is to make people in the stands enjoy the experience, not just see the cars. Okay, it went down the track. Okay, and I've seen guys do that. I've worked with guys that do that. So I've got to inject information about the cars, and I'm kind of a car nut. Ask my wife. Everything in the house is car related. We've got a Christmas tree that is loaded with. If you ever gone to Hallmark for their Christmas ornaments, yeah, ours is all cars. Now we do have some Christmas balls on there. But they were pinstriped by a car pinstripe.
Good. Yeah, as it should be.
Yeah. So, but that's about it. So everything in the house is car related, whether it's the wall art, or and then just for fun, I've got a slot car track in my office, and it folds up to the wall, and then folds down when we want to use it. So we have fun. And she told me I can't buy any more slot cars. I've got 500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got carried away.
That's a few.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into the discussion, I do want to point out that that issue of Hot Rod magazine that's at everyone's table, that is a reprint of the very first issue of Hot Rod. This was the 75th anniversary year, this year, January 1948, the very first issue of Hot Rod magazine. This past January issue was our 75th anniversary issue that we debuted at the SEMA show in kind of a big deal in our company's booth there. And I've been with the company 20 years, started as an intern, if you can believe that, for photography at Motor Trend magazine, and did a production job. I ran the photo studio that we had at the time, and then I was a photo editor of Hot Rod Carcraft magazine, and then staff opened and became available at Carcraft, and so I was in Carcraft for 12 years as just a lowly guy on staff, and then got to be the editor of the magazine for about 4, and then with Hot Rod for now. This is 6 years of going on Hot Rod. Never, all of that is to say, I never thought I'd be here at a time where 75th anniversary, and you think about all the stuff that's happened, all the people that have been in the magazine, all the events that have been covered. So, you know, it's so cool to see this. I have a few copies that I keep of that issue on my desk at work, just to say, this is where everything started. 24 pages, 25 cents, and but look what this whole thing has spawned. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how it started. I'm obviously not that old, I'm close, but when I was a kid, my allowance was 25 cents a week. And that would be what I would do, is I'd go to the candy store by my house, you know, private, whatever it was, and I'd get an issue of a magazine. At that time, it's little pages, but I finally had to get rid of them. I had 40 cases. It filled a 14-foot box truck.
Wow. So
when I moved last time, I said, they gotta go, so I went to a swap meet and got rid of them all. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, and I hear that story just, you know, throughout my career. I hear that, you know, I've been a subscriber since, and I always loved that. I've been a subscriber since 1975. I've been a subscriber since 1956. Not to bring up some bad news, but we recently announced that we're going quarterly. You know, those are changing times. You know, you can flame me later on. I'll wait over there. If anyone wants to have some harsh words with me, but I assure you that wasn't my decision. But the passion is what strikes me in this community, is that that's how you learned about, I was never good at math in school, you know, but cars and working on cars is a way that you can wrap your head around math. And we try to make that point as a way, like, we educate people. There's entertainment for sure, but there is also education that we do. And, you know, that's, for people who were maybe like me, not very good at math in school, for example, but here you can see this is how, in a way that appeals to you, And that's what I think is important about what we do, and you know, as we evolve into different media and continue to do, yeah. But we can still carry that message on, and that's what I think what's important.
Yeah, cubic inches. That was, you know, I figured that out as to how big an engine is and things like that. Yeah. And now we've got to teach metrics, which, right. How many cc's is that? How many liters is that motor? Right. No, I'm still trying to convert it back to cubic inches here, so, you know. But, you know, and how do you get kids involved? Right. And that's, put the book in front of them. Right. Let them look at it. Put them, we do a thing. We go to a lot of car shows. My wife and I have 7 cars between us, so depending on what the car show is, we take specific cars out. We've got a Woody parade we're going to be doing in Malibu over the weekend, or Sunday. We've got a 29 Ford Woody Hot Rod. We're going to take that out. You park in a parking lot, and there's people walking around. Invariably, someone's brought their kid. The best way to get a child involved or someone involved, put them behind the wheel. That's right. It's a car. Put them in the seat. And we do that every place we go. It doesn't matter we have show cars, 1 or 2. My wife's car won at Grand Nationals here 4 years ago. We still put someone behind the wheel. We put a kid in the car. It's a car. They're not going to destroy it. But the best way to get a kid involved is get them in the car. I was that kid. And that's how I got involved. I had a neighbor, had a Porsche Speedster. Wow. And this was in 1955, 56. And he let me sit behind the wheel. I couldn't see over the dashboard, but I could sit and see the speedometer and hold the wheel, and that was exciting. Right. And then I had a cousin that had a TR2, a Triumph, and we had to go someplace for a family event. I got to ride in the Triumph. I couldn't see over the dashboard. But man, that was an exhilarating experience, and that's what got me involved. And the sports car I had was a Triumph TR3.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I'm sure you hear it too when you're out interviewing people. But yeah, the most common story, and you would think you'd get tired of hearing it, you know, me in my career, is I had one, my neighbor had one, my dad had this, so I want that car. But I love hearing that story no matter how many times I hear it, because it's just the way it resonates. I bet you remember every smell and feel of those 2 cars, the Speedster, the TR2. I bet you know, permanently ingrained in your brain.
Oh yeah, and a few years ago, well, not a few, almost 30 some odd years ago, I was pulling into Pomona for the Good Guys event. And I have a 48 Plymouth Coupe, and I drove that in. And this kid is pulling his father through the parking lot until we finally stopped. And he comes up, introduces himself. I don't know him from anyone else. He wants to look at the car. I've got a full house flathead 6 under the hood, which was unique. And he wanted to see that and stuff like that. A number of years later, he says, "You gotta come over and see my car." Now he's 16 years old, and he kept in touch. I go over, there's his car, his dad's car. It's a 48 Ford sedan. I was trying to copy it. It was on the cover of CarCraft.
Oh, wow.
Or Rotten Custom, I forget which, but it was on the cover. Sure. And I remember seeing it the Rose Bowl swap meet. I'm copying his car. He's copying mine. The kid's got a Plymouth Coupe, and he's copying my coupe. And now he's an adult. He's got 2 kids, and they're in cars too. And it's the same situation. You get the kids involved in the cars, and they go up to Bonneville. We saw them at Bonneville this last year, and the daughter sells lemonade to people that are thirsty. And she's involved with the cars too.
There's a reason to put kids in the cars. And the reason is, as we get older, we're going to want to get rid of those cars. And if those kids don't like these kind of cars, we're not going to be able to get rid of them.
You know, and that is what's happening. My business partner and I went down to Barrett-Jackson, and we were interviewing people down there. We do a gratuitous plug. We do a show called Talking About Cars on PowerTube TV. And we were talking with people, and Barrett-Jackson and the guys at Mecum both agree the cars that we grew up with and we love and we drive are falling out of favor because the kids of today never saw them. Well, unless you take them to that, they're not going to know about it. And that's exactly what you've got to do. You've got to show them that these things, they're really, unless they're reading Hot Rod, they're not going to see old cars.
And they're not going to read Hot Rod because it's not going to be in
Well,
We can talk later.
yeah, that's it.
We can talk later.
We've got to get into cruise nights. We've got to get into the cars and coffees, caffeine and gasoline events, wherever that is around you, and you get them there, and you get them in the car. You get them to the drag strip. I'm like, I've got 2 grandkids locally, and they are becoming car nuts. Now they're 3 and 4 years old, but when I bring my car over, they've got to get in. They've got to get behind the wheel, and to the chagrins of their grandmother, they like cars. But that's how we got them involved. We got them involved by getting them in the car and let them sit behind it. I don't necessarily have to start it up, but when I do, they love the sound of the glass packs, and it raps as you lift the throttle. That's the things that they're going to remember, and those are the things they're going to listen for. Now, chances are they're still going to drive that import, but that's because that's what's on the road. That's what they can afford, and that's what they can buy. But hot rodding is hot rodding, whether it's an import or a domestic car. It's getting them involved with cars.
That's super important.
As an import guy, I just want to say that, like you're saying, actually reading it, I think like ladies like Alex Taylor are doing it for the young generation. Like I'm an import guy through and through. I have an Acura NSX, go to police, like the exact opposite of what is this typical community. But the way you guys welcomed Nabs and I into your community was absolutely incredible. Like today was our first time, like my first time ever at a hot rod event. And like you're saying, how do you get them into it? It's like you're absolutely right, put them in the seat. And how do you get them into the seat is by getting them interested with people like Alex Taylor, who like online and like Instagram and websites and stuff like this, and that way they can learn it. You know, you garner the interest that way. You have like incredible ambassadors like her, and then exactly what they're saying. You know, it's like it's so great to hear. It's like it's such a phenomenal thing to hear, like such a blend of cultures, like what we're used to, and hearing this, it's like where we come from. We're hot rodders, but we learned it from you guys.
Good.
You know, it's like Japanese hot rodders, and it's like I came from the European scene, the Japanese scene, and we host Super Street Garage, which is like all Japanese cars, but we look so much up to you guys because of the amazing things you guys have done.
Well,
you know, it's like the fact that Hot Rod Magazine's been around for 75 years, incredible. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for welcoming us into, like how kind you guys were to us today. Like my first hot rod event ever, I had an incredible time.
Hot rodding is hot rodding, and a lot of people don't understand this. It doesn't matter what the origin of the car is. I've got domestic hot rods now. While I was building my coupe 40 years ago, I was racing a Nissan, or a Datsun at the time, and I worked for Nissan corporate. And I took a championship driving a Datsun 1200. The horsepower to weight ratio and figuring things out, I was blowing the doors off the 510s because they had to slow down in the turns, and I didn't. Before that, I had a Volkswagen Beetle. I won when they had the indoor shows, the canning indoor shows. I raced the Beetle, and I won sweepstakes in the show. You have your same things. You want wide tires. Why? You have better traction. You got to cover the tire. Well, you got to flare the fender. Okay, I can flare the fender. It's tin. It's steel. It works the same. Right now, I only have domestics. It just worked out that way. But I spent a lifetime. I've been doing the announcing for 40 some odd years. But I've also worked on the OEM side. I started with BMW. I went from BMW to Nissan. From Nissan, I went to Isuzu. And then somehow, because they were owned by General Motors, I went to work for them. But it's all about the cars. It doesn't matter whether it's Japan, Germany, get a Yugo. All right, don't get a Yugo. But it doesn't matter where its origins are from. Hot rodding basics are hot rodding basics, and they work regardless of where the car came from.
Couldn't agree more. And it's also like, on top of the cars, it's like realistically, I'm sure you two have seen it more than ever. You've seen every car you possibly see. It's the people that keep you.
Oh yeah, the people keep us here for sure.
Yeah, it's a car community. My wife and I belong to 6 different car clubs. This weekend was just fun. We had 4 car club Christmas parties, one in the morning each day and one in the evening each day. And they range from Corvette to hot rods to the Woodies to, and I don't remember what the last one was, but it's just But we made so many friends in the hobby. And even with the Woody Car Club, for example, one of the guys that's in the club was a test driver for BMW. So he has his hot rods, it happens to be a Plymouth Woody, and he worked for BMW. He loves BMW, his daily driver is a BMW, but on the weekends, that's parked. And he's driving a cool car.
So Bob, you mentioned your time at the OEs. What was your capacity? What's your work experience?
It just depended on what it was. I spent a lifetime for a few months working in Japan. When I worked for Nissan, I was a technical editor to start with. We wrote the service manuals, we wrote the technical service bulletins. I would spend a month to 2 months with new model. And we would take it apart from the front bumper to the rear and photograph it and document it so we could figure out how to write the service manual so we could work on them. And I worked at the factory in Yokohama and the corporate office in Tokyo for a while. I went back, this time I was in service and engineering, and you got to work on a car, you need some special tools sometimes. As technology changed, the tooling changed. So I would help develop the new tooling. My degree's in, I went to school actually, and my degree's in broadcasting, but I never planned on using it because I had an instructor that said, you know, I went to work today and the next day they changed the format of the station, I'm now out of work. So I never decided to do it full time. My first job out of college, I was an auto shop teacher for LA County Juvenile Probation Department. And at the time, yeah, I had an afro. I had long curly hair. So it was the same time as the TV show Welcome Back, Kotter. So the kids used to call me Mr. Kotter. And it was fun. I enjoyed it and learned that at that point that's not what I wanted to do. I did technical work. I'm technically trained. I know I don't want to do that for a living. I don't mind doing it for myself. I just don't have the desire to do it for a living. I'm not a flat rate mechanic. I can't do that. So I can teach it though. And with that, it got me into the OEM side with various different things. I ran the customer relations department for BMW in California and in Texas. I did customer relations with Nissan. I did a whole bunch of different things with Nissan. Same thing with Isuzu. I ran the customer relations department and then went on to marketing. So it just, the technical knowledge and the interest in cars opens the doors. Where you go once that door is open is up to you. You don't have to turn wrenches if that's what you want to do for a living. But with the knowledge, you can get almost anywhere you want. It's just where you focus yourself and where you limit yourself. And you are your only limits. And I found out I don't like limits. So I did a bunch of different things.
Well, you have an awesome voice. You said you sort of stumbled into doing announcing at an autocross event. So how did that turn from just that one event into what you do now?
The guy that offered me my first job, I made $25 a race, which is a lot less than I did now. But we started out doing motocross at Lancaster Fairgrounds up in the Antelope Valley. Then he said, you know what, we got to do something for the kids. Let's do bicycle motocross. So we did bicycle motocross. So one week it was motocross, the next week was bicycle motocross. And we saw the kids transitioning from bicycles to motorcycles. Well, then there was the older gentleman who said, I'm going to fall off a motorcycle, I need to use a car. So we made a circle track, and we did USAC hobby stock. Then the local newspaper said, "What? You're a car guy, why don't you write a monthly or a weekly column for us?" So it was the Antelope Valley Press. I wrote a weekly column, automotive column for them. Antelope Valley Drag Strip was opening up, became LACR. Most people know it by that name. They said, go cover their opening. So I went over there and showed my press badge, and they said, go see the track manager. So I go see the track manager, he says, aren't you the guy that works at the fairgrounds? I go, yeah. He goes, and I stayed for 20 years. At the same time, you know, you got to do something on the weekends when you're not doing this. I went to a Good Guys event, and their guy was sick, or whatever the case may be, and Brizio's daughter was working for Good Guys at the time. She says, don't you announce it? Yeah, here. And I stayed with them for 13 years. With that, I got asked to do a radio show on the Kaleidoscope radio network. And I started a show called GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene. And I did that for a while, but unfortunately the riots happened in LA, and the station was in the middle of it. And I took one across the police lines. I'm sorry, I don't like being a target. And they said, you're fired. I said, okay, I'm alive, but I'm fired, so that's no big deal. A few years later, doing what I'm doing at the tracks, Scott Hudson, who is one of the docents here, was the host of Speed Scene Live TV. And just like you guys, hey, why don't you come in, we'll talk to you about your announcing. And I stayed for 5 years. Until the show went off the air. Then I took over the studio, and GAAS became a regular feature there. I teamed up with, if you're from the LA area, you listen to KNX News at all, Randy Kerdoon was a sportscaster. Well, Randy and I became friends. We got introduced at a car show, and the promoter of the show said, why don't you do the award presentations? I didn't know Randy, other than his reputation. He didn't know me, he had no clue. And we started bantering back and forth and doing the award presentations, and when we figured we were doing something right, it's because the photographer who was shooting the awards fell off his chair laughing. So we became friends. Now, as I said, my wife and I are car people. We got married 7 years ago on the starting line of Irwindale Speedway during a race called Night of Destruction. We thought it was appropriate. KNX covered it, and Randy was the reporter that covered it. Randy and I since became friends, and now he became my co-host on GAAS. I became his host or co-host on the show on KNX called Talking About Cars. When he got retired from KNX this last year, PowerTube TV said, hey, come talk with us. And now we're on PowerTube TV talking about cars. And we have fun. We go all over, we interview people. It's not necessarily about the car, but the people that have them. And everybody's got a car story. We focused for the first 5 or 6 years on celebrities, guys you see on TV all the time. And we got to meet a whole lot of people. We got to meet Tony Dow before he passed away. And he had some great car stories. He had a Corvair. It was his first car when he was doing the TV show. He was 16, he got a Corvair, which was a pretty hot car at the time. Well, he had to sell it. And the guy he sold it to had kept it since Tony was like 17 or 18 years old. When that gentleman passed away, he willed it back to Tony. And we met at a cruise one day, and there's Tony, and he's telling us a story about his car. So we interviewed him. We had Jerry Mathers together with him one time. And we've had other people, Fernando Lamas, or his son, whatever his name is. I forget, anyway. Anyway, we had the whole group from Renegade, the TV show. And they all had a different car story. It doesn't matter whether you were a car enthusiast or not. You ran out of gas someplace. You had an interesting car. You got busted somehow. And there's always a car story. And I'll tell a joke about a car story. I have a 48 Plymouth Coupe. I drive it all over the place. It's been on the road for almost 40 years now, and there's no place it doesn't go. I was coming back from a car show. I have 3-point harnesses on it. I had a friend who met a windshield, and I figured I wasn't going to do the same thing. So I put 3-point belts in it. I've always worn seat belts, and this was just a little bit extra. I got caught in the sobriety checkpoint at midnight. Okay, I don't drink. I'm not too worried about it. Well, the cop, a little bit of a CHB, I don't want to say smart ass, but he was. And he looks inside the car, and he sees the 3-point belts, and he goes, where's the airbag? I said, I don't live with her anymore. He said, get out of here. You're sober. No, we don't even talk to you. But those are the kind of things. There's always a story like that. Someone's got something like that, and we try to draw that out of people. It can be fun. You never know what's going to come up. Some people will say something, oh yeah, in the back of my mind, oh yeah, remember that? And the guy, well, we interviewed a husband and wife at one point in time, and they were both actors. And he starts talking about something, and she goes, you never told me that. Oh yeah, which one was that? Well, never mind, it was just someone before we met here. One of those things. So it's always fun. You never know. Everyone out here has a car story that someone else may not have heard, or they were a conspirator with you. Either way, it happens. And we would try and draw that out, and that is what our show is about.
Very cool. It's kind of what we all do here.
Yeah.
Anyway. We're gonna open it up to Q&A, but I got one more question for you, Bob.
Yeah.
What kind of cars do you currently own? What was the favorite car you either own now or previously owned?
My favorite car, well, let's see. I got a letter from DMV one year telling me I needed to get a dealer's license. I had 50 cars. When I went through college, I wasn't going to take out student loans. It's just not in my nature. I hate having loans. I don't want to be indebted. So I would buy a car. We had a newspaper out in the San Fernando Valley. Can you remember the San Fernando Valley? Remember the green sheet? All right, there's a section that said nothing over $25. Invariably, there was a car in that. It may run, it may not run. I would go and buy it first thing Sunday morning. Paper would come out Saturday night. I would go steal a copy from someone's lawn and go make it to that car. And if it rained, I drove it home. Wax it, polish it, clean it up, steam clean it, put some tires on it, whatever it took. The following week, I'd sell it. And that would pay my rent and my tuition. And that's how I got through school. I don't know, where was I going with that? Anyway, I had 50 cars one year, but I made the mistake of registering them. And DMV sent me a letter saying, you gotta get a dealer's license now. I just stopped registering them. I've had over 100 cars, is easy to say. But like I said, one year there were 50, and I didn't stop. And that continues on. Right now, my wife and I have 7 cars. We've got a 46 Ford, that's hers. She had that before we got married. It's one of those things, you know, you ever see computer dating, send me a picture of yourself? Yeah, she sent me a picture of her car. And I mean, okay, 46 Ford, that's cool. And it's got a full house flat head, tuck and roll. And I put seat belts in it to, you know, so the grandkids can put their child seats in the back. That hasn't happened yet, but we're working on it. We've got a 48 Plymouth that I have had since, it's been almost 40 years. Its shakedown run was Good Guy's first West Coast Nationals in Pleasanton. And I drove it from Burbank, where I lived at the time, up there. Not a single problem. It was great. I had somebody pinstripe. We painted the flames in the garage the week before. I got together with 2 friends. One guy was a UBS driver that knew how to spray. The other guy was a writer for a different magazine. His name is Mike Bishop. He and I drew them out one night. We masked them off the next night. We sanded it, and then the guy came over and he shot it. And then I drove up to Pleasanton and I had him pinstriped around it. And that's the way it was. It's a full house flathead, 3 on the tree. Dropped it. I cut the springs in the front so I could get low in the front. And it just cruised. It was a great little thing. Now, the guy I told you about that chased me into Good Guys, I was blowing head gaskets and I decided I'm not going to keep that engine anymore. I'm going to change to a V8. I told a friend that Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake, I was going to get rid of I was going to change the engine. Before I got home, I had calls from this kid. He wanted the engine. He still has it in his 40 Plymouth Coupe that he built to copy my 48. So it's still around, it's still alive. His name is Tom Barrett. He's got, his wife has a 32 sedan. He's got a 32 Roadster. The kids are growing up. We see him in Bonneville all the time. We go to Bonneville. If it's a race, we're there someplace, or a car show. We got her 46, my 48. We got a 56 Chevy wagon. Now, we went to, before we got married and we're trying to plan things out, we went to a cruise in Santa Clarita at Route 66 restaurant. And it's a great place. We're walking around, there's a 56 Chevy wagon for sale. I'm looking at it, yeah, that's kind of cool. He wants too much, but okay. I walk away. She comes over and says, you see that 56 over there for sale? He said, I think I can get it for less. Okay. She got it for less. We split the cost. That was our wedding gift to each other. Now that car didn't quite work out for us. We had it for about 3 years. And we're going to tow a can-ham trailer. You know what a can-ham trailer is? It's an early vintage aluminum trailer. It looks like a can-ham. Well, to do it with this car, which was all stock mechanically, I was going to put disc brakes on it. That 265 just did not enough horsepower, more power. Turbo 350 trans or 700 or something like that for overdrive to cruise. And it had no upholstery, so we'd have to reupholster it. And the paint was patinaed. We'd have to repaint it. And there was so much thing, I figured that's going to cost about 20 grand. Well, we went to another cruise night in Santa Paula. There's a 56 wagon. All that stuff is done. He's selling it for what we paid for the one that needed everything. We bought the one that had it done. and turned around and sold the one that needed everything for the same price that we paid. That worked. So we tow a canned ham trailer that matches the car. Now, Peg names everything. My wife is Peg. She's the funny looking lady here. The lady sitting right here. She names all her cars. The 56 wagon happened to be owned by a lady whose father won the Indianapolis 500 in 1946. We call the car Indy. The trailer's name is Anna. So we have Indiana. We have a 2003 Corvette anniversary car. It's red. I forgot what you call it. Red. So we've got it. And then we've got her 46 Ford, and you call that Ruby, because it's kind of ruby red. We have I've got an HHR panel truck, because it reminds me of a sedan delivery. I call it the refrigerator because it's white. It looks like a big refrigerator. You call it cue ball because the shift knob is white. And it looks like a cue ball. And then she's got her Lincoln. She drives an MTC Lincoln, and because it's a Lincoln, who was the lead person advertising Lincolns? Matthew McConaughey. She calls her Lincoln Matthew. So every car's got a name. And we have, like I said, we have 7 right now, plus the trailer. And you know, I love the lady. When we were living in Anaheim after we got married, and we decided that's it. She was working for another car company, and that was done. It was bought by another car company who was going to move everyone back to another car company. And so we decided we're moving up to my place up in Port Hueneme. So we live up in the Ventura area, but we had to have some place to put the cars. So we sold the house that we had. We bought a garage because it was cheaper to buy it than to rent space. Well, we thought it was big until we put a couple of cars in it. So she goes, you know, we're going to need more room. You better get a couple of lifts. I like this lady. So we put 2 4-post lifts in there. So now we get 4 cars in the garage. The trailer goes behind one of the cars. Now, in front of those, we have a original soapbox derby car from the 60s. And then there's enough slot car track to build a nice, huge slot car track. And that'll eventually get done, I keep saying. All the pictures on the walls are cars. They're either ours or not. Our living room has a picture of both of our cars. When we would do our anniversary, we would do our anniversary at Urbandale every year, and I would have a pin made up. And we called our wedding arrangement Rings and Rods. So we had rings and rods, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've been married 7 years. So we had a pin for each one of those. As far as what cars I like, you know, if it's got 4 wheels on it, I like it. What do I like this week? We're looking at the Barracuda up front. And I've been talking to Pat about that. And it may find its way into our garage. But I'm going to give Mike and from retailers, they built the car. Mike and Aunt built that car, and I kidded with them when they first ran it. So if we get that, I'm going to really kid them. But it might end up in our garage. We just have to figure out what's going out first. So, but at this point in time, I love what we've got. What do I want? Well, Barracuda's on the list.
It's a good choice.
It's a good choice, yeah. Yeah, I know it runs 1170, so yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah.
Nice little driver.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, I'm happy to open the floor up to any questions you got for Bob or for myself. Anyone have anything, just shout it out. John?
John is a longtime fan of yours, associate back in the day, and you've spent much more time in the Motor Trend, Peterson, EMAP, USA, Lotus Stein buildings than I have. As a big fan of his, you have a good great basketball story.
I don't, and I never did get to meet Gray. Gray, yeah, which is fine.
I worked with him for a little bit with David back in the day, and I thought you were there in that time, and I was such a fan of his.
Gray Baskerville was a long-time feature editor for Hot Rod magazine, probably a 34-year career with the company. Started actually at Rod Custom, I believe.
Yeah, Doc.
And then moved over to Hot Rod. Worked there through the 90s, I believe. He died in 2002. But maybe a little bit later, I could be wrong about that, but I started in 2003 as an intern, like I said. But I heard all the stories. So Gray was a feature writer, excellent writer, very creative. He would use interesting words to describe sounds and sights and just the sensation you get from driving a car. Very prolific too, very prolific writer. But he drove this 32 Ford every day. That was his daily driver. And I mentioned the 75th anniversary issue of Hot Rod, the January issue from this past year. Was cutting to the chase. We photographed Gray's car at El Mirage, and I spent lots of sleepless nights. What do you do for Hot Rod 75th anniversary? What do you put on the cover? You can't blow this. You can't do it like a crappy job. And I didn't want to redo what's been done in the past. I looked at all the previous anniversary issues, but I just kept coming back to Gray's car. A man named Jim Shelton owns a car right now. He lives in Las Vegas. And I got in touch with him. I said, hey, can you photograph the car? And he's like, yeah, I still drive it every day. He left it, Gray sold it to Jim. Well, Jim bought it after Gray died, but they worked out an arrangement right before Gray died. You can buy this car as long as you don't change anything. And so this car was unchanged from basically like 1970 when Gray was driving it. And if you look back, you can find it on our archives if you don't have the print copy, but you can find it on our archives for free. You don't have to sign up for anything, but look in the archives, January 2023. Wes Allison photographed it. It's a beautiful picture at El Mirage. In the goodie bags that were given away at the start of the event, there's a calendar, and that's the cover of the calendar too. That was from the photo shoot. So that's Gray Baskerville's car. And I never got to meet him, but I heard all kinds of crazy stories. He was a real character. I heard one of them was he was adjusting an antenna on the top of his roof one night in a thunderstorm, and he wasn't wearing any clothes. So he was like, something, the TV went out, he runs up on the roof, and the neighbors call the police. And they show up, and this dude's just like, oh, where'd I go? What's going on? They're like, what's going on up there? He's like, well, I'm just fixing my antenna. And nothing on. So,
I always wondered the story because I've seen the car a few times since his passing, and it still has all the original primer spots that he left on it, that he had already never foam painted the car, and it's just cool. Yeah, I would never paint that car.
You couldn't.
You can't.
Yeah, no, you couldn't. It would take away everything that it was about it. One other thing about that car, and I don't mean to go on and on, but was that it had never been on a trailer, and Gray was very proud of that. Yeah. And so poor Jim, I saw him today. He was going to bring the car, and he was beside himself. He said the car's on a flatbed. He was leaving to drive here, and he broke the radiator. And Jim's 83 now, so he's not going to be able to like just fix it on the side of the road. So a flatbed had to come pick the car up. And Gray called it a stretcher. Like, car's never been on a stretcher, don't put it on a stretcher. And so Jim saw me today, and a couple people warned me too before I actually saw Jim. He's like, we saw Jim, he wanted you to know ahead of time. The car was on a trailer. I'm like, it's okay, we forgive you, Gray forgives you. I think we've honored the legacy. But it's kind of cool, the stories that it's the cars, it's the people, you need both to have things like that. So that's my Gray Baskerville story.
Well, you talk about the guys from Peterson, and we talked a little earlier about, I have a friend, Martinez, and he writes, or he publishes Rotting USA now, Paul Martinez, and he used to be a photographer for Peterson, and for Motor Trend and such, and he's, I get to meet guys like that. This is one of the great things about what I do. He happened to live across the alleyway from my sister-in-law, and I'm driving down the alley, his garage is open, and I see his 34 Ford in there. I know that car. It's been a street rodder a bunch of them. Well, he rode for street rodder before he came to Peterson, and so we became friends. In 1983, there was a new car from Chevrolet, the C4 Corvette,
Right.
It was an amazing machine. No one had seen the pictures of it yet, but Paul was charged with shooting the photos for the upcoming issue, introducing it as Car of the Year.
Wow.
I was racing at the time, at CCA and such, and Paul couldn't turn if he had to. So he said, you gotta come over to the house. I go over to the house, he opens the garage, and there's this Corvette, and that is the most astounding car. If you've never seen a car of that nature for the first time, it just blows your mind when you see it. He tosses me the keys, says, take me for a ride. So we went up into the canyons. It was around 11 o'clock at night. No one was on the canyon roads, and I had been very fluent in Mulholland Drive. And we were double and triple the posted speed limits.
Yeah.
And he said, wow, this thing is great. It's really good. I said, no, it's better. I reached my limit about 20 miles an hour ago.
That's cool.
Yeah, but no one at Peterson ever found out about that until now. And, but yeah, it was a kick. I blame Paul. I've had 2 C4 Corvettes since then.
That would have looked like the space shuttle sitting next to an 82 Corvette.
Yep.
And I remember an issue where they had like when that car came out.
Yeah.
It was just the frame without the body on it, and then the flip-up headlights. I mean, that's just such a cool car, such a departure from what it was. So, cool.
But no, it was cool. It was great. And then driving it, I knew I had to have one someday.
Yeah.
And I waited until they got rid of the throttle bodies, and I got one. And it was great.
Any other questions out there? John, go ahead.
Way in the back.
Yeah, I was wondering, are you planning on doing this again next year?
Yes, actually, yes. I can say we are going to do another Power Tour West next year. I know a little bit more details, but there's a lot of things still being worked out, but we will be doing this again. Yes?
There's 28 years. How come it's so long?
That's a good question. Events are extremely difficult to put on. And then West Coast events too have been kind of difficult. We did do Drag Weekend. You guys may remember that. I was with, I was a photo editor at the time. I was on the production side when they tried to do Drag Weekend, and just didn't get a lot of turnout. I get that question all the time. When are you going to do a West Coast Drag Week? When are you going to do a West Coast Power Tour? So this is kind of baby steps for us. This was a really compressed time schedule that we put this event on too. But we are looking at more days next year, and definitely though another Power Tour West. So we'll have 2 Power Tours next year. Thank you for being here, everyone. By the way, too. This is really good. I love it. Thank you so much. Yes.
Hi, I'm Harry Barton from Reno, and it's my first Power Tour. And I just wanted to say thanks, man. Every interaction I had with every Motor Trend Hot Rod person today has been awesome. Dulcich,
Yep.
Lucky,
Yep.
DJ, Taylor,
Yep.
everybody, the crew. These guys right here got up and moved so my brother and I could sit down. Like, they are an example of what a great crew you have out here, and I just want to say thanks. So, where do you go?
We have a very good crew of people. You know, the talent right here, all these guys. Lucky's a friend of mine. Our events team, the editorial team. It's there aren't a whole lot of us really who put these things on. And, so you know, Gina can say this is a lot of work, but we all. The pay isn't awesome, so we're here because we love it. We're here because we love it. We're here because we care, and I hope that's the impression you're getting. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
10 more minutes for the food in case anyone wants to go for seconds or thirds. Any other questions, Paul?
Here in California, you know, there's going to be legislation that you can't drive these hot rods.
Yeah.
Do you think that is really going to happen?
Absolutely not. That's just me saying it. I just, number one, obviously, I don't think we have the infrastructure. 2, I don't think you can legislate people into, people will rebel. I have 2 old cars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things to think about, the Senate just passed the bill preventing Newsom from telling us what we can drive.
Good.
It's got to go to the House now, but it's already passed the first hurdle. So it's passed, and it's going to rescind Newsom's order that we can only sell electric cars here. So that's already it's halfway there. It just has to go through one more group, and once that's approved, you can buy an electric car if you want one, but you don't have to.
Yeah, but this went beyond that.
Yeah, it did.
This one, if you have a hot rod, you can take it to an event, but you got to put it on a trailer, take it to the event. After the event, you put it on a trailer and take it home. You cannot drive them in the state of California.
EPA sent out a survey last year, and it went to anyone who owned the 1978, well, not anyone, just a select few, 78 and older cars. And they wanted to know what your driving habits were. Everyone is surmising what you're saying is what they're going to do. I've spoken to a couple of people, and one of the people is someone from EPA. That is not what they're admitting to, but my partner and I are putting them on the spot in the next few weeks to go over specifically that, because that is what it sounded like they were trying to do. And I know a number of people who saw it, tore it up, and threw it away and said, "You're not going to get this information from me. And if I have to, I can register it with the P.O. Box in Arizona." And that's what a lot of people will do. And I know a lot of guys that did that when California banned 4-speeds. You couldn't buy a car with a 4-speed transmission. Not because it was banned, they couldn't certify them. They wouldn't certify in California. I had a couple of friends that had Corvettes. They went to Vegas, bought the car, brought it home, drove it for about 6,000 miles, and showed up at DMV and said, "Hey, guess what? It's a used car. I just bought it." "Oh, okay, it's a used car. You can register it here now." So there were ways around that. I've got friends in Arizona. I've got a stepdaughter in Salt Lake City. One way or another, we're keeping our cars.
Yes.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and there's a lot of rumor going around about that. We're going to pin down the guy from EPA, or not EPA, CARB, California Air Resources Board, about that, plus the guys from PRI and Hagerty. Now, Hagerty has just come out and said California is one of the worst states in the country as far as accepting old cars. Yet it's the birthplace of hot rodding. So there's a lot of controversy on that. We're going to hit it head on, and trust me, we're not going to let it sit.
All right, anything else?
Of course, that's all reaffirming the fact that we need to get kids behind the wheel.
Exactly.
With these cars,
Yep.
and get that passion growing.
Yep. Get involved, stay involved.
Yeah. Yep. And you've got to get the legislators out there too. Yep. We've got to let them know that this is more than just a pollution device. And I don't know about any of you, I haven't got a single car that's stock. They've all been upgraded, improved. Our 56 wagon's got a TPI Corvette motor in it. Does it meet emissions? Technically, no. What's the tailpipe going to tell you? Well, it's got a catalytic converter, but it's a whole lot cleaner than an original 56 Chevy. And that's something they've got to look at. Most cars are running improved, upgraded engines, and frankly, fuel injection is something many people are going to, if not, I'd say 75% of the cars on the road are getting fuel injection. Look at, Holland, the Sniper. There's so many retrofit kits you can put on a car with fuel injection and make them cleaner. And it's happening. It's going to happen. LS motor swaps. Those things are clean even without a catalytic converter. But so it's happening. It's going to naturally just happen. And it did happen. The end of the flathead to the overhead valve. Engines improved. They moved to fuel injection from carburetors. That started years ago. There was a time when people just took the fuel injection off, especially on the Corvette, saying, I don't want this monkey motion. And now everyone's looking for them. They want to put those back on because they run better, the car's cleaner. They're not black magic. It's easy. But we just got to get a 6-year-old to figure out the computer system.
Well, Bob, thank you very much for your
no
time.
problem.
I really appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you all very much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.